panel discussion by the experts on the subject, as we are all well aware that this is a very crucial topic, and we are thrilled to have you with us as we delve into this critical issue that affects the well-being of our younger populations, an extremely honorable panel of experts. So first of all, I would like to call on stage Professor Susanta K. Padi, who's the chairperson for this particular session. So please. Dr. Susanta is Professor, Department of Psychiatry at AIIMS Bhubaneswar. Sir's areas of interest lie in severe mental illness, common mental disorder, child and adolescent psychiatry. Sir has attained a training fellowship on child addiction treatment curriculum in USA, and Sir is also an affiliate faculty at the Virginia Commonwealth University. So we welcome you. Now I would like to also call on stage Dr. Nidhi Chauhan, who is our chairperson for this particular session. Ma'am is Assistant Professor at the Department of Psychiatry, PGI Mer, Chandigarh, and ma'am's area of interest are child psychiatry, adolescent psychiatry, and neurodevelopmental disorders. And ma'am has various published research papers in international and national journals, book chapters related to the area of interest as well. Now I would like to request our esteemed chairpersons to please introduce our speakers, Professor Anju Dhawan and Professor Arun Kandaswamy.
Yeah, good afternoon. So I am privileged to introduce the speakers for today's session. The Professor Anju Dhawan, who is Professor of Psychiatry and Drug De-Addiction Treatment Center at NDTC, Delhi, whose area of interest are, of course, the substances intervention, including focusing on the adolescent and children substance use, and her major achievements in the contributions in the field of mental health is, I would say, less listed here. So she is the lead author in the study of multicentric study, where the feasibility and the effectiveness of the buprenorphine versus methadone as a maintenance therapy funded by the UNODC, and also the epidemiological study on the substance use of the adolescents funded by the National Commission for Protection of Children Rights, and also the street children substance abuse funded by the WHO. And many more. The measures are only highlighted here. So with this, I think we are delighted to welcome and invite Professor Anju Dhawan for the speaker. Madam, please.
Thank you. So I'm going to be talking about this issue of substance use in children and adolescents. And I think it's only in about the last decade or so that we have started talking about this issue. And in the previous panel discussion, this issue was raised that why did we not talk about women earlier? I used to think about this, that why don't we talk about substance use in adolescents, you know? Because those of us who are working in the field of substance use, you will see that only a very small proportion of our treatment seekers are actually adolescents, not more than 5%. But when we talk to our adult substance users, what do they say? They all say that they started their substance use when they were adolescents, with the use of gateway drugs like tobacco, alcohol, and then went on to use of other substances. So the question was that where are all these children who are starting substance use and are going to come to us later when they become adults? Why aren't we seeing them in treatment centers? And why is nobody talking about this? The field of addiction treatment started in the country probably in late 80s, with some research happening even before that. But till very recently, nobody was talking about this issue. So now that it has become much more visible around us, that it has generated some concern, and that's the reason we are here today talking about it. We know that it starts with gateway drugs, and then a smaller proportion goes on to use of harder substances like cannabis, and still a smaller proportion may go on to use of opioids. We also know that use at this age is associated with very many risky behaviors and negative consequences, which are more related to the acute effect of substances, not necessarily related to their long-term use. So when we talk about a young person using alcohol, we are obviously not so immediately concerned that he will develop cirrhosis, but we are definitely concerned that he may drink and drive, he may get into a fight, or he may indulge in some other behaviors that will expose him to substantial amount of risk. It's also well known through literature that those who start early are at increased risk. So somebody who starts social drinking, let's say in his early 20s, his risk of becoming dependent on alcohol or developing alcohol use disorder is very different from an adolescent who starts drinking at the age of 14 years or 15 years. So it's imperative now that we talk about both prevention as well as early identification and intervention. Today I'm going to be mainly talking about the epidemiological aspects and the risk factors, and largely drawing on the work that we have conducted over the last few years. So this is, I'm going to be sharing the general population data first. This is the study on the extent, patterns and trends of drug abuse in India, which was the national survey, which was carried out in males aged 12 to 16 years. And it was a household survey that was conducted by NDDTC. This was the first national survey in the country. And then more recently, after almost 15 years, a magnitude of substance use study was carried out in the age group of 10 to 75 years, which included both a household component and a component of respondent-driven sampling, which is used to give a representative sample from a hidden population. And the sample size of this study was 10 times more than that of the previous study. Now looking at this data, if we come to alcohol in children was 1.3% as compared to 17.1% in the adults who were more than 18 years of age. The data in this report for adolescents has been segregated for 10 to 17 years of age, and that for adults is more than 18 years of age. Cannabis about 1%, with adults having 3.3%. Now coming to opioids, it was 1.8% as compared to 2.1%. Now this is quite surprising, you know. A hard drug like opiates, this includes opium, heroin and pharmaceutical opioids or medicinal opioids. The gap seems to be narrower. For inhalants, it was 1.17% and adults 0.58%. So overall, the number of children who are using substances is quite large. And these are numbers enough to give a wake-up call. Now when you compare the magnitude of substance use survey, this is the findings from the two surveys, the 2019 survey and the 2004 survey. They are not strictly comparable because the first survey was only in males. So these figures include males and females, and if the prevalence is lower in females, then these combined figures would tend to give a lower reflection about use amongst males. Also the age group is different. This is a wider age group as compared to, starts at 10 instead of 12 years. But if you see opioids, still it shows a stark increase. In spite of these figures likely to be because they include both males and females. Likely to be lower. If you just look at males, it may be still higher. Now coming to the data on substance use in school children. Sorry, this is a mistake in the breaking slide. So I'm still talking about the, So coming to the data on the substance use in school children, this is the GYTS data, the Global Youth Tobacco Survey, which was done in school kids. The data is available for 2003, 2006, 2009 and 2019. Now as far as tobacco is concerned, there is good news, because you can see the use is declining over the years. Current tobacco users, boys also it has reduced, girls also it has reduced, smokers also reduced, but not that much. While smokeless, there is a substantial reduction. There was a significant decline, but the decline is more, it has reduced the gender difference. So here you can see the gender difference being more stark as compared to here. So that means the girls have also reduced, but not as much as the boys. Now another emerging phenomena is the use of vaping or e-cigarette use. And the GYTS 2019 studied that as well and found a 2.8% prevalence of ever e-cigarette use. So that is another issue which needs attention. Now coming to alcohol use in India, you saw the figures in the National Household Survey, 2019. They weren't that high as compared to other substances. But this is a kind of review which was done recently, 2022, and it has included studies which were carried out in the community, in the school settings. But this review did not only include adolescents, it also included youth up to the age of 24 years. And what it showed was, I was really wondering whether I should show this slide, because all it shows was a huge variability across studies in the prevalence. 3.9 to 69.8 ever use, current use again wide range, but it showed that a large proportion were using on a weekly basis, but there were some who were using occasionally and some who were using daily. This was the mean age of initiation for alcohol use. This particular study only looked at alcohol, 14 to 18 years. And the correlates were male, older age, academic difficulties, parental use of alcohol or tobacco, which is a risk factor, non-contact sexual abuse, and perpetuation of violence. So these were the factors which emerged in this review that looked at the studies over the years that had been carried out in India. They have included studies even in the late 70s. Till the current survey was also part of this. Now I'll be discussing the findings of the 10 city student survey that we carried out in 2019-20. The national survey 2019 that I just spoke about also had some smaller focused studies. And this study was on adolescents. It was not designed to give representative figures of substance use in school children across the country, because the sample was not representative. But across 10 cities, 3 schools were included. And in each school, grade 8th, 9th and 11th were included. These included government and private schools. It included urban and rural areas. So all this was included. We were the coordinating center, and these were the other government medical college. Chandigarh was part of it, Srinagar, Lucknow, Ranchi CIP, Mumbai, Bengaluru. Dr. Arun here was a co-investigator in this study, Hyderabad, Imphal, Dibrugarh. So the total sample of 5,920 students included males and females. Mean age was about 14 years. And because we included both government and private schools, so the socioeconomic strata was very variable. The parents included professionals, semi-skilled workers, etc. The findings of the study were that 1 in 7, 15.1% students in the classes 8th, 9th, 11th when taken together had ever used a substance. This included tobacco and alcohol also. About 1 in 10 had used in last 1 year, and about 1 in 14 had also used in last 1 month, at least once. So what it suggested was that there was a high rate of continuation of use of substances. That means out of those who had ever used, 2 and 3 were continuing to use in last 1 year, and about 50% had also used in last 1 month, which suggests that the first use itself increases the risk of continuation. Now coming to the actual figures of prevalence, which again I'm saying are not representative of the country, but since it was in 10 cities, it gives us a fairly good idea. Tobacco and alcohol were about 4%, opioids again quite high, but a large proportion of the opioid users were actually pharmaceutical opioids. Cannabis 2%, again largely bhang. The other cannabis preparations were less common. Inhalants also nearing 2%. Sedatives somewhat less. Now we asked them that suppose you were using, would you report your use or not? This was to identify is there any underreporting, and a substantial proportion said for both cannabis and opioids that we will not tell if we were using, about 50% for each, which means that these figures are maybe on the lower side. Now comparing the data from the school survey, which actually has an age range of 13 to 17 years, with the national survey data, which was 10 to 17, you can see that these figures here from the school study are about 2 to 3 times higher than the prevalence that came out for adolescents in the national survey. This may be partly because this included younger children, but it may also be that in an anonymous kind of methodology used in a school setting where a child is filling up the questionnaire himself, he feels safer to respond than in a household setting. Now comparing the school survey, which was carried out in 2019 with the national survey prevalence for adults, 2019, you can see the figures for opioids, adolescents, adults, not strictly comparable, but just to see cannabis quite close. But the use in younger kids is mostly pharmaceutical opioids, while in adults it's heroin, as per the national survey. Now coming to what is the situation in other parts of the world. Let's look at the data from US, same year 2019. US carries out a school survey that gives a representative sample of the country every year, called Monitoring the Future survey. We should have something like that in India, if not annually, more at least in a few years. So this is the data that comes across. Any illicit drug use, 27.7%. If you remove marijuana, still 9%. Very alarming. So we are still in a good place, although it's not a time to be complacent, but the concern is that we should not head in that direction. Opioids, we are very similar to what's happening in the US. Cannabis, probably due to legalization and other factors, we are still, it's much higher in the US. Alcohol is much higher. We are largely an abstinent society still. So inhalants quite close. So this tells us that, this could be the potential direction. Many other things are changing in the country. Now, the Monitoring the Future survey in US also found drugs like cocaine, LSD, hallucinogens, amphetamines, tranquilizers, steroids in 1 to 3%, which we have not found in our survey. Vaping was very high in the US survey. It was to 20.5. But they are showing a decreasing trend for most substances. So this is 2023 data from the US Monitoring the Future. It has reduced as compared to the 2019, which I just showed. Now what is happening in the world? Let's look at the World Drug Report. Alcohol ever used 57%, e-cigarettes 32% ever used, last 1 month use, cannabis ever used 12%, last 1 month 6%. Narrowing gender gap, girls similar or more than boys for smoking alcohol or e-cigarettes. So it's important to know what's happening elsewhere so that we are able to take steps to prevent that. Now coming back to the school study, the 10 city student survey that we carried out, males and females, the gender gap is less than what we were expecting. The difference is not so much. In last 1 year, 9% females, 11.3% males. Grade 8th class student, about 7%, 11th, 15%. So it has almost doubled. What does that mean? Our preventive efforts have to start even earlier than that, and they have to continue through the middle school till the adolescent finishes his schooling if we really want to prevent. How frequently were they using? This orange part is those who were using occasionally. So that's the good news. For most of them were using only occasionally. But for some drugs, daily or almost daily, the mustard part, the yellow part, this is charas or ganja, about 1/4 were using daily or almost daily. Opium, heroin, although the numbers were small, out of those who were using, a large proportion were using frequently. And that is understandable considering the abuse potential of these substances. But a point of caution, a large proportion did not respond to this question. So the blue shows that. Now, what was the age at which these children, adolescents were starting substance use? About 13 years, but it was lower for volatile solvents or inhalants. Reasons for initiation. I was really wondering, should I show this slide? Everybody knows, curiosity, peer influence, expectation of a high. But there are also adolescents who start due to relief from anxiety and depression. So both externalizing factors and internalizing disorders play a role probably. And the subsequent slide, I didn't show the subscales, but the point to highlight is that as well from this part of the study where we looked at the psychological difficulties using the strength and difficulties questionnaire. About 1/4 had high or very high scores indicating psychological difficulties. These are not substance users. This is data for the entire sample. So, and about 1/4 of our kids who are studying in school are facing challenges in terms of psychological difficulties. And out of the users, a higher percentage had high or very high scores. And if we took it on a continuous variable, still the differences were significant. And this included, there were subscales in this instrument, and it included internalizing and externalizing issues, but externalizing being more prominent. We know that adolescent substance use is associated with ADHD, conduct disorder, and not only does it predispose to substance use, it can make the course and outcome more severe. So what can one do? What are the implications of these findings? That our schools should be equipped to identify these issues so that it works like a preventive strategy. If a child is having psychological difficulties, the teacher should be able to identify, should be able to refer to the school counselor. The school counselor should be able to address these issues. If it's a disorder, ADHD, let's say, then it should be identified, treated, referred for treatment. But is that the case? Do we have the manpower for it in terms of counselors in schools? And are our teachers and counselors having the capacity, have they been trained to do this? Because usually when we talk of substance use, we only talk about identification, treatment, but these issues are very important. Now looking at family factors, frequent conflict in the family, 25%, substance use in the family, tobacco, alcohol, 40%, cannabis, 5% of children reported someone in the family using. Out of these three substances, 2 to 3% reported someone was using. And as compared to non-users, it was higher amongst users. But when we ask them, although we just assess this very grossly, 2 questions. Do your family members know how you spend your time? Do your family members know who you spend your time with? A vast proportion, more than 90% said that they are aware. Which means that these are some of the issues that we need to really focus on. Of course, the last issue is not something that we can afford to neglect. Now coming to substance use in friends. This is the proportion of children who reported that their friends were using various substances, tobacco, alcohol, cannabis, inhalants, heroin, pharmaceutical opioids, etc. And it was higher amongst users as compared to non-users. The illicit substance use was more common in family. We can see about 40% said some family members are using. And the illicit substances, inhalants, were more commonly being reported that some peer was using. They also said 1 in 2 children in that sample said that these drugs are easily available. Tobacco, 1 in 3 said alcohol, and 1 in 10 said that opioids are easily available. This is the proportion that reported that they had been offered tobacco or alcohol, offered bhang, offered ganja, offered opioids. So very important to teach them the skill how to say no, and that should also be part of the preventive curriculum in schools. Now, what are the problems that these children were facing? Each of these problems that I have listed were present in about 5% of the children who were using: absenteeism, reduction in grades, failure, giving up entertainment, medical issues. This is just a broad question. We didn't assess for medical problems. Accidents, sadness, anxiety, fights, anger, relationship problems with peers, friends, parents, money loss, and even being apprehended by the police or having got involved in some kind of illegal activities. Help seeking was overall very low, and treatment seeking also very low. About 1% had sought some kind of help. Now, coming to the issue of street children. Now, this is a particularly vulnerable population, and I think if we talk about substance use in children and we neglect to talk about this population, then we have forgotten them. This literature shows 40 to 70% of street children in India use substances, and our numbers of street children are substantial. We carried out a study in Delhi where, using the respondent-driven sampling, we got a representative sample of street children from one child going to another, and using the statistical methods of a sample of 766 street children from 25 interview sites covering all districts of Delhi. Of course, this data was collected with the help of NGO partners because they were already present there working with these kids. 1/3 had used some substance in last 1 year, tobacco 31%. You can see these figures are much higher than what we saw in school kids. 30%, 14%. Cannabis 8%. And what were the reasons? Besides the usual reasons that we just discussed, handling hunger, dealing with cold, to forget about the family, getting rid of fear or anxiety. These were some of the reasons reported. Another study which we carried out, it's a little old, 2013, on this study was 4,000 substance using children. The denominator was substance using children across the country. And data was collected by NGOs over a period of 2 months. So this was the visible population of substance users. And the inclusion criteria was any child who had used any substance besides tobacco in last 1 year was included. So it included school children, out of school children, and children who were living or spending their time on the streets. What it showed was that more vulnerable the child, street child is the green bar, out of school child is the gray bar, the orange bar, and the school going children are the gray bar. So the more younger the child, the earlier was the age of initiation for each of these substances. The substances used were these are the proportions, these are not prevalence or percentages. Amongst the children who were using substances, 80% were using tobacco. And 12% among substance using children had also injected. Now again, this is a visible population, maybe more severe population of substance using children. But it brings to attention that injecting drug use does occur in children as well. A lot of these, in the study, children reported some very stressful life events had happened to them. Sickness, death in the family, being in a situation where they feared losing their life, living in a conflict-ridden area, facing violence from police or community. Very, very high proportion of substance-using children reported this. And there was not so much difference across these three groups, although obviously these were more vulnerable children, so they more often reported these traumatic, stressful events in their life. Drug use by family members, family fights, beaten and abused by family, again reported by a very high proportion of substance using children who were sort of identifiable in the community. Many of them also reported intoxication, fights, sexual behavior under the effect of substances, experiencing physical or psychological problems, and getting into legal problems. So, when these children were asked, do you want to quit substances and do you need help for that? 1/4 of them said, yes, I have a problem, but I can stop it on my own. 1/4 said, I want to quit and I want help. But actually, very few had sought any kind of help in the past, largely because services are not available. If they're available, people are not aware of them. If the services are not specifically designed for adolescents, not adolescent friendly, they feel uncomfortable probably into coming into adult treatment settings. So this, to summarize, substance use affects a significant percentage of children, including those in schools. It's higher and with earlier age of onset in more vulnerable children. Those who ever use were likely to continue, as we saw from the data. And the preventive interventions should of course be provided to target the risk factors. Vulnerability includes due to poor psychological functioning, we saw that. Multiple family factors, substance use, conflicts, being beaten up by the family members. Whether this is a consequence or a risk factor, we didn't go into it because this is a cross-sectional study. Traumatic life events, peer-related factors. So preventive programs should be multi-pronged. I've already talked about this. Parenting education skills becomes very important. Many children are willing to take help. Many are occasional users in school settings. So where should help be provided? Help can be provided where the child is. That means if he's on the street, the NGOs who work with street children their capacity should be developed to provide early interventions on the street. If the child is in the school counselor's capacities should be developed to provide early interventions, brief interventions in school settings. Because for many of the substances that they're using, counseling or psychological intervention is the mainstay of treatment. But again, capacity building efforts need to be there. Those who have more severe substance use should be referred for treatment, because also comorbid psychological problems are common. They need to be addressed as well. So specialized services also should be developed in the country, both outpatient and inpatient, for this purpose. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Anju Dhawan, for covering widely and also in focus, taking us through from 2004 to, and also covering the data from the India in the various setting from the school children